The minute you say bus rapid transit, people say, oh my gosh, Al, don't. There couldn't possibly be another angle of bus rapid transit that we haven't explored a billion times already, Alan. There just could not be. Well, no, you're right. There probably isn't. Probably isn't. Except for this. Just hear me out on this. Just hear me out for 1/2 second, okay? What if instead of discussing the routes, what if instead of discussing the speed, what if we went for something totally unique and we said, all right, but the buses that we're going to use, those are zero-emission buses. What do you think of that idea? That's kind of cool, right? Well, believe it or not, it's actually happening. Not far away from us either. And here to talk about it is Dr. Josipa Petrunic. I butchered that name, didn't I? I butchered that
good
one.
enough.
No, it was good enough. It was all right. Tell us what's going on just down the road from London, Ontario right now.
Sure. Well, what we're doing, the organization that we run, the Urban Transit Research and Innovation Consortium, we've worked with Brampton Transit and York Region Transit, and then further west, TransLink in British Columbia. And these transit agencies have gotten together into a world-class, global-first electric bus trial. So Brampton and York Region have approved the procurement of up to 16 electric buses across their transit systems, and they have a couple different routes they're going to put those buses on. And these buses are pretty unique in that they plug in en route, so while passengers are getting on and off the bus pulls in and plugs into a high-powered charging system, powers up for a couple minutes, and then continues on its way. And in this way, these buses can keep up operational pretty much throughout the day.
So help me, because this is going to be the question everybody wants me to ask. Are we sure we want to go electric here when the cost of electricity in Ontario is skyrocketing? Does it cost less to run a bus like this?
It does. So when we've done the economic modeling, of course, we want to figure out how much energy are you going to be using, how are your hydro bills going to look compared to your diesel bills.
Right.
And what a lot of people don't realize, I think in the popular discourse, we tend to think of hydro bills as really expensive and gas is really cheap or diesel is really cheap. But when you pump those pieces of energy or those units of energy through a propulsion system, electricity is a lot more efficient, so it ends up being a lot cheaper as a fuel for vehicles. And we saw that in the bus world as well. So we modeled it out. And just as a comparison, in the Brampton case or the York case, if you look at Brampton Route 23 or 26, typically the buses, when we modeled it out, are coming in anywhere from $40,000 to $50,000 cheaper per year to operate compared to their diesel bus equivalent. And part of that is based on the price of diesel today and predictions about carbon pricing driving that price up. And then part of that is simply based on the extreme efficiency of electric motors.
The idea of the bus going in, let me ask you just kind of the way that the bus would ride. Does it take the same amount of people? Does it go the speed limit, things along those lines? Would anybody that is going on this bus notice any different?
Yeah, people would notice difference, but generally for the benefit, generally for the good, you'd notice right away that it's really quiet. If you sit at the back of an electric bus, you can talk in a normal tone and the driver can hear you. Somebody sitting at the front of the bus can hear you. If you sit on a diesel bus, you generally don't get that because there's the roar of the motor. So you're definitely going to notice that it's a lot quieter. It doesn't vibrate as much, so it's just less noisy. And people do typically report that it's a more pleasant ride. And we know that in Winnipeg and Montreal, where there are electric buses already, drivers tend to prefer the buses because of that smoother, quieter ride. In terms of, what it carries and so on, the passenger capacity of the bus really depends on the size of the battery. So batteries can get really large, and depending on how much battery capacity you want on board, if the battery gets really large, so we're talking like 600 kilowatt-hour battery pack or 300 kilowatt-hour battery pack, there you might start cutting into the number of passengers you can carry on board. But in our trial, we're looking at battery packs that are fairly manageable. They're between 76 kilowatt-hours and 200 kilowatt-hours. So the passenger load on board is the same as a typical diesel bus.
Dr. Josipa Petrunic joining us. She is with the Canadian Urban Transit Research and Innovation Consortium, and just down the road from us, not far away, it was Brantford that was doing this with the test project. Is that right?
No, Brampton and York Region.
We in the London, we just kind of get them all the B's confused. So Brampton has a zero emissions bus. Basically what happens is it plugs in while people are kind of coming on and coming off, and then they start heading back out. Let me ask you about the cost of the buses. If London was to say, we've got this new bus rapid transit project that we're working on, we've got the routes finally settled, we've got all of the dust kind of settled from the arguments we've all had. Let me ask you, if I was to buy all new buses for this, would your fantastic flying super bus, would it be more expensive than the normal bus?
Yeah, so sure, definitely upfront. And the things with electric buses is you always have to consider the upfront costs are more than your diesel bus. And part of that's just because of mass manufacturing, and it's not at the same level as diesel bus manufacturing. Those costs will come down over time, but the real savings with electric buses is over the operational lifetime of the vehicle. And most transit agencies have buses around for 12 to 18 years. So what you have to demonstrate is that these buses are cheaper over 12 to 18 years. And what we did to prepare for this trial in Brampton and in York Region and in TransLink out in Vancouver was we modeled out, well, how much do you spend on the bus up front? So say a diesel is about $500,000, and an electric bus is about $800,000 to $1 million. So you're paying a premium right up front. But how much can you save over time in electricity? And we know you can save costs, about $50,000 a year per bus from going electric. And then how much can you save in maintenance? So people tend to forget that electric vehicles, whether they're cars or buses, actually the maintenance is quite low. There aren't fluids, there aren't a lot of moving parts, there aren't diesel engines, and diesel engines break down quite traditionally and classically. So they carry heavy maintenance costs in the diesel world, but not such heavy maintenance costs in the electric world. And when we added that all up, the electricity savings over time, the maintenance cost savings, et cetera, then we found that the break-even point was somewhere around the 7 to 8 year mark. So about the 7 to 8 year mark, you're breaking even on your upfront costs, and then you're starting to save money. And if you're a transit agency and you're owning the bus for 18 years, well, you're definitely saving money over those 18 years.
This is just a test project right now in Brampton and some of the other cities. What is the likelihood this gets completely adopted and moves forward and becomes the wave of the future that theoretically, by the time maybe London does get their act together with the BRT, maybe we could put in all electric buses?
Yeah, well, actually, the whole goal of this trial is that it's not a one-off. So it's there for 2.5 years where the manufacturers are helping the transit agencies get trained, get their maintenance staff ready, iron out all the wrinkles and kinks with having these vehicles on road, learn how to take care of them, learn how to manage them. And then after about 2 years, we're launching a second phase where we're going to double the number of vehicles on the road, double the number of transit agencies involved, double the number of hydro companies involved. And then we're going to launch a phase 3 where we triple the number of agencies involved. So the goal is over the next 5 to 6 years that we've really grown to hundreds of these electric buses and on charging systems across Ontario and across Canada, such that it now becomes part of the normal procurement process. So nobody thinks of these things as science projects. Everybody thinks of these things as typical buses you can buy. And I have to say, actually, London is a great opportunity. We've been in conversation with folks in the London community. We work with London Transit, and the application of electric buses to rapid transit ways is a great engineering and scientific opportunity. The next generation of charging systems, just to put it in context, compared to the ones in our trial that are launching next year, the ones in our trial are 450 kilowatts, so that's kind of a power level. There is new technology that's coming around the corner next year, and it's in trial mode right now in Europe, and it's 600 kilowatts and above. And these are charging systems that are ideal for rapid transit ways. They're meant to plug into your bus in 1 second and charge up the battery in 15 seconds. So the battery gets charged up at 600 kilowatts of power or higher in 15 seconds as people are getting on and off the vehicle, and this is perfect for rapid transit ways.
There is a battery that will run a bus that will rejuvenate its energy in 15 seconds?
Yeah, it's extraordinary. I mean, battery technology itself from a chemicals perspective has really improved over the years and will continue to improve. But it's not just the battery. People tend to think about, well, the battery and where is the technology at. It's also the power electronics on board and the conversion devices. So it's one thing for your battery to absorb enough power, and that has to be at the state of play that we require it. But the buses and the power electronics, the electrical equipment on board, and the chargers have to be able to deliver the power, convert the power, and pump the power into the battery. And all of those pieces have been improving exponentially over the last couple of years, largely driven by market demand in Europe and in Asia. And now in Canada, some of our bus manufacturers, New Flyer Industries in Manitoba and Nova Bus in Quebec, they've been driving the agenda forward to make sure that Canada's at the cutting edge of these technologies.
That's fascinating to look, and you've already been in talks with us here in London about the possibility of us having one or maybe more buses involved with our public transit here.
Yeah, absolutely, because there are, of course, there's rapid transit ways across the province and across the country, but as you well know, they're always controversial, and there's always a lot of dialogue around where should they go, how should they operate, and there's an ongoing dialogue as to whether bus rapid transit ways should be converted into LRTs in the future, and that's not just any particular community, that's generally across Canada, a general discussion. And one of the things that we've been looking at is, well, do you have to go to the LRT route and install all that infrastructure if, in fact, you have these really autonomous, movable, flexible, fast-charged electric buses? Now, rapid transit ways in and of themselves, apart from all the benefits that they could accrue to a community from a scientific and technical standpoint, London, insofar as it will have a rapid transit way, could become one of the sites of this global technology, one of the first sites in the world to test and demonstrate it because it has committed itself to a rapid transit way.
You've been amazing with your time and incredible with the knowledge that you passed along. It will be interesting to see London's reaction to all of this. Next time you're in town, you'll stop by the studio, right?
Well, yes, I will do. And next time in town, based on your last interview, I'll stop by for a beer somewhere, too.
We've got a lot of them. I'll even buy them. I'll buy the first one, but you're on tap for the rest of them, you understand?
Not a problem.
Doctor, thank you so much for this. Appreciate it.
Thanks for your time.
All right, Dr. Josipa Petrunic joining us again. She is the CEO of the Canadian Urban Transit Research and Innovation Consortium. And I'm glad a texter sent this in at 10-12-90 because I think this is maybe why we should start to lean towards electric buses. Who gives a flying fadoo? No, that's not the word that he used. I changed it. If the bus is electric or not, it will still be in my way or stuck at a train crossing. I think that's stuck or at the unsynchronized lights. Yeah, I think that might be the point, though. If we're not going to have the rapidity of the bus rapid transit system, if it's going to be slow anyways, and it's going to be stopped at a train tracks and unsynchronized lights, then what if we could say, but we can now, after about 7 years, save money on this thing by being electric? Maybe that might sway us back into the whole electric bus debate. Then at least maybe we could also say, but hey, I got something cool now with the bus rapid transit instead of kind of having this half-assed project that doesn't really please anybody, right? Just Optimist Ollie over here, that's all.